for Security and Intelligence at the University of Buckingham, who's in Oxford. And with me in the studio is Nigel Farage, leader of the United Kingdom Independence Party. So, Nigel Farage, first of all, your reaction?
It's a good day. Those of us that have been campaigning against the US extradition treaty and against the European arrest warrant, all the way through, we've said that in many cases, the alleged offences for which people are being extradited were actually being committed in this country. They may not have even visited those countries, and that it may be more appropriate for evidence to be produced and to be heard in this country. And I think the fact that what Theresa May has said is that she's going to introduce this forum bar. It's a very, very welcome U-turn from the government. There's a lot more work needs doing. You know, this US extradition treaty needs to be completely rewritten, but this is at least a step in the right direction.
Anthony Gleeson, you're doubtful.
I'm extremely doubtful. It's a fact that hard cases make bad law. Indeed, it's in the existing extradition treaty that if there is a threat to life or fear of a loss of a life because of extradition, then extradition would not be appropriate. That's in the existing treaty. But Theresa May has gone far beyond that, because she's not only used the human rights argument rather than Gary McKinnon's sickness, and I accept absolutely, you've got 5 eminent psychiatric experts. They say, no, he can't hack being sent to the United States of America.
Hack is a deliberate choice of word, I assume.
It was a deliberate choice of word. To use the human rights argument and then to say that in future, which Nigel Farage, Shami Chakrabarti, David Davis and the civil liberties lobby will all enjoy, that in future we're going to look very carefully and try in this country people who have been accused of offences against other countries. That would be disastrous, not least because we would have a vast number of people coming to the UK simply to escape justice.
I could see Nigel Farage looking puzzled.
But Anthony, how can it be right that any British citizen is extradited to America or Greece or wherever it may be without any prima facie evidence being put before a judge? With this US treaty, my friend Christopher Tappin, who was extradited 8 months ago, was extradited on what was a reasonable suspicion. That could be gossip, for goodness sake. Isn't it the first duty of the British government and our judicial system to provide some basic protections for our own citizens?
But of course what you're saying, Nigel, is simply not true. This matter was looked at just a year ago by Sir Scott Baker.
Oh, it was a whitewash, wasn't it?
No,
a total whitewash.
Well, Nigel Farage, you think everything is a whitewash.
Well, he didn't go and speak.
No, excuse me. Let me just finish. What Sir Scott Baker said was that the request to the UK to extradite to the United States must involve a reasonable suspicion. Requests to the USA need to have a probable cause. Now, reasonable suspicion and probable cause, Sir Scott Baker, an extremely experienced judge, said the difference in these terms was semantic. If we hadn't had this European arrest
warrant, I don't agree with that.
The idea that a judge has an opinion doesn't mean we can't have one as well. Nigel?
I think that is outrageous. I think, as I say, reasonable suspicion are simply not sufficient grounds to send people off to countries whose judicial systems, frankly, do not come up to scratch when compared with ours.
Well, to say that about the United States is just
I'm
nonsense.
sorry. I'm a great friend of I'm a great friend of America.
Well, show it.
I'm a great friend of America. I've worked for American companies. I was in New York last week. But we now have a plea bargain system in America where 98% of cases result in people pleading guilty. And I can tell you, in Mr. Tappin's case, he is now in an impossible position where the legal fees, for him to defend his innocence, the legal fees mean that he will lose his house, and if a jury in Texas was to find against him, he'd face 35 years in prison.
Wow.
The whole situation is unreasonable.
He may be guilty.
Well, he may be guilty, but even if you're innocent, even if you've done nothing, you are forced into a system where you have to plead guilty, and that can't be right.
Well, Anthony, just back on the Gary McKinnon case. Yeah. I mean, the difficulty with this McKinnon case is that he did something in his mum's bedroom on her computer, and suddenly the Pentagon want a word with him, or the USA. And there's another case as well with a fellow who in Sheffield University who developed some kind of, I don't know, spider search engine for films at tvshack.net. You will have seen this. Richard O'Dwyer. Now, they want to have a word with him as well, so they want to get him over to the USA. These are crimes if they were crimes, committed not on American soil.
But they are committed, in the view of the Americans, against the United States of America. And it's a fundamental principle of justice that wherever possible, and it may not have been possible in Gary McKinnon's case, but wherever possible, you should try people in the countries where they are alleged to have committed their crimes.
The internet makes that difficult,
you see,
it?
no, well, it's not difficult, really. If you think, just the other day, I'm not saying that he committed a crime, but Jeremy Forrest, the 30-year-old teacher who took young Megan Stammers off to France with him, came back to the United Kingdom because he knew that the European arrest warrant had been issued against him and that he would be extradited if he wasn't sent back.
And by the way, he may be innocent and his case is coming up. So
that is a point,
good point
that I have made. And Abu Hamza, Baba Ahmed, Julian Assange, they will all grasp at Theresa May's words, and we will have endless years of trouble.
Anthony, we have been extraditing people abroad and seeking extradition for over 200 years. There's nothing new about this. So before the European arrest warrant and before this American treaty, we had sensible extradition rules. All I'm arguing is this.
There is something new, which is the internet, which means it becomes easier to commit crimes in another country.
Well, that's certainly true.
But they should think of that before.
The basic, and surely, Anthony, you would agree, we have a legal system in this country that's evolved since Magna Carta that involves a judge seeing some evidence, and to extradite people across the world on a reasonable suspicion that may be little more than gossip, I think is unacceptable and needs to be changed.
But just because you keep on saying it, Nigel, doesn't make it true. Sir Scott Baker has looked at the grounds used to extradite people to the United States of America and has concluded that the difference between the two requests is semantic only, and has to do also with the Fourth Amendment to the United States.
Theresa May has changed her mind
today. May I just finish? I think she is. I think she's afraid of you, and I think she's afraid of the civil liberties lobby.
Good.
But the fact, well, you say good, but the fact of the matter is the United States is our most important, our most steadfast, and our best ally. We've had an extradition treaty with the United States since 1842. These people are alleged to have committed serious offences against the United States. And what Theresa May is doing is very dangerous.
Just on an Abu Hamza point, Nigel Farage, the logic of your position is that Hamza should stay in this country, isn't it? That's
No, I'm not. If evidence was produced to a judge in this country who felt there were reasonable grounds to think that something had happened here, then he would have been extradited.
But his case, the case against him may be even more tenuous than McKinnon because it's about hate speech and where does that lead? I mean, it's the use of language.
I think the Baba Ahmed case and the Saeed Hassan case are even more disturbing. And you know,
Julian Assange.
Hang on a minute.
Julian Assange. I mean, I do not hold any torch for Julian Assange. Please believe you me. And you know what? Before the European arrest warrant, there would have been no difficulty in extraditing him to Sweden under the previous arrangement. So there's no question about that. I'm not saying no to extradition. I'm saying there must be a due process.
OK, all right, we'll leave it there. Thank you, both of you. Fascinating discussion. That was Nigel Farage of UKIP and Anthony Gleeson, the Director of Security and Intelligence at the University of Buckingham. I should say the Centre for Security and Intelligence. Otherwise, it makes it sound like they've got their own intelligence service.